Yep.
So for the first time in like 3 months. All right.
Yep. All right. So first thing we wanted to talk about the college football games. There was the most of them on Saturday, and then the game last night. So I mean, my first takeaway is, I mean, I know this is no surprise to anybody. Georgia and Alabama still really good.
Yeah.
I know everyone's. I know no one is shocked by that. It's the most obvious thing I've ever said on this show. But they look pretty much the same.
Yeah, and the SEC still has. I mean, a lot of those teams, they just have so many good players on their teams. So that's why. I give. We can talk about Utah. I give them credit for scheduling Florida and then going to play Florida, like flying across the country. And they only lost by, I guess it was 3 points or something.
Right.
So, it sucks for them to lose, but it was a close game. But still, Florida's unranked, so I don't know how that affects Utah going. If Utah was to run the table and win the Pac-12, or can they still get in the playoff? I don't know.
Yeah, so let's talk about that game first. So that was a really I thought that was the best game of the weekend. It did have that was really competitive. Both teams going back and forth. Utah playing a true road game, going all the way across the country to play in Gainesville, and that's really legit. And they came close to win. They had a play on the goal line at the end to win the game. Quarterback threw an interception, but both those teams are good teams, and something to watch as we go forward. Anthony Richardson, the Florida quarterback, wow, looks like he's legit. He's like 6'4", 230 pounds, and the dude can run. So he's going to be an interesting guy to watch as we go forward, especially when we get to talking about, quarterback prospects for the draft. That's going to be, he's really going to be something to watch. But that was, I thought, the best game of the day. Alabama played Utah State, so, what are you going to say? Of course they beat them. They destroyed them, which, most games this weekend were blowouts because it's most teams weren't playing.
And even that's the thing one of the things I don't like about this weekend is that they'll hype up these out of conference games, and a lot of them just are not, Georgia plays Oregon and they totally crush them. And no offense to Oregon, but it's just like, you could kind of see that happening. It's just, that's kind of the way it is. And then it's like, oh, Notre Dame's playing Ohio State. And, it was close, I guess. But, at the end of the day, it's like, who's the better team? Ohio State's obviously the better team. So, yeah, it's just, I was interested to see that North Carolina played Appalachian State and barely won. And the game was like, it was like a college basketball score.
Yeah, that game, there were two incredible games going on at the same time. So North Carolina State played East Carolina, and, there's been some talk before the season, and I brought it up in our college football preview. NC State may have, the kind of team that people think have an outside shot at the playoff, if they can beat Clemson. And they really struggled in this game, and East Carolina missed an extra point and then missed a last-second field goal to win the game. Otherwise, they would have lost. So it was not a good performance by NC State, but quite an exciting game. The Appalachian State-North Carolina game was insane. So Appalachian State was up 21-7. And then North Carolina scored 34 points in a row. So they're up 41-21 going into the fourth. And Appalachian State scores 41 points in the fourth quarter or something like that. And they barely lose. They tried to first they tried to go for two to win the game with about 30 seconds left. They didn't get it. Then North Carolina, this is kind of funny, the minutia of college football. They kick an onside kick, right? And North Carolina returns it for a touchdown, which you're going, no, you don't want to do that. All you wanted to do was sit on the ball. They had no timeouts. So that gives Appalachian State the ball back, and they're down 8. So they go down and score with 33 seconds to go. They take the ball. No problem. We're going to score. And then they went for two, to tie the game, and they weren't able to get it. But there was just incredible back and forth. There were, I think, 60-something points combined with both teams scored in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
It was absolute insane.
Well, again, that's why if you're a Division I school and you want to compete for the championship or to get into the playoff, there's really no benefit to playing I guess it's a FCS school, football championship subdivision school.
Right.
There's really no benefit to playing those games because if you win, well, you were supposed to win. If you lose, I mean, that's horrible. If you play a really, really close game like North Carolina played with Appalachian State, that just looks bad. People like if you're in a situation where you're analyzing their resume and you're going, well, do they have any big wins? And then you're going to be like, well, I don't know, maybe. But then you look at that and you go, well, they didn't lose that game, but they almost did. That's going to look bad for the whole season. So.
Yeah, and they went to Appalachian State to play them, so they played them on their field. Which I give North Carolina credit; they pulled it off somehow. But there was no defense in that game, the entire game. That was a pinball machine.
I mean, and by the way, like I said, if you're a Division I school, scheduling that game does do no benefit. But for the FCS school, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, in Appalachian State, they're probably going to be talking about that all year long. We almost beat North Carolina.
And Appalachian State is known for beating some of these teams. Famously, they beat Michigan years ago, and so they're a dangerous team. I thought what Georgia did was really impressive to play Oregon. I know they played them in Atlanta, but it was a neutral site game. They played Oregon and just absolutely wiped the floor with them. Georgia's up front, their offensive and defensive lines are just sickening. Like they had, Oregon had no chance. But what I liked about Georgia was they really opened up the offense. Like last year, Georgia really didn't have to score against most teams, so they just were running the ball. This game, it was the quarterback throwing, making plays. They were swinging for the fences. So I think Georgia's not quite as good on defense, but I think they're going to be better on offense. So I think it's a really exciting game. I think Georgia and Alabama both have a chance to go undefeated, but I kind of feel like, we'll see what happens. As always, there's a chance they could lose a game. Here or there, you get the right team, on the right weekend, and you never know. I thought, I give Notre Dame credit for going to play Ohio State. I really thought they had no shot, going into this game, but they hung in there and they had the lead, through three quarters.
Right.
So, I give Notre Dame credit. They don't have much of an offense, unfortunately. They don't have a whole lot of playmakers on their team. And I don't feel like, I think for the first game, I think Ohio State was a little bit off. But, that being said, I thought, Notre Dame played well, and I thought their defense played pretty well. So Marcus Freeman, good. He gets good marks from me for his first game as a head coach. I thought, Notre Dame was up to the test. They weren't able to win. Ohio State just has so much more talent than them that it's really difficult. But speaking of crazy games, that finish last night with LSU and Florida State was just nuts. If anybody watched, it looked like Florida State had the game. They're up 2 touchdowns with about 6 minutes to go.
And you could argue they maybe should have been up more because I just felt like they were playing better. LSU had some. Did LSU was it LSU that had penalties? No, it was Florida State that had some bad penalties that helped LSU drive down and get it within 1 touchdown after they were up 24-10. FSU was up 24-10. And it looked like the quarterback for Florida State, he made some pretty good throws. Just the receivers, they only helped him out a few times or a few other times where if they'd have made some catches, then maybe Florida State wins, going away. And LSU just, I thought defensively they were okay. But, granted, even on the plays where I'm complaining that the FSU guys didn't make plays, the LSU defensive backs are really good and they're kind of all over the receivers. But LSU's offense just, I wasn't that impressed with the quarterback. That's one of the things I find tough with college football is it's tough to tell because so much of the offense is basically like you take the shotgun snap and it's basically like I'm throwing to this guy, or if I'm not throwing to him, I'm throwing to him, and we're going to figure this out within a second. And I'm getting rid of the ball. And if that's not there, I'm running. So it's very difficult to tell which quarterbacks are able to actually sit there and okay, that's not open, boom, and they beat you with the ball rather than just resorting to beating you with their feet. So
yeah, I think
kind of hung in there and made some throws.
Yeah, LSU's got some offensive line issues, obviously in that game.
Yeah.
You could tell in that game which team had their coach in the third year. Florida State's coach is in his third year, and which team had a brand new head coach. You could tell by the way that they played. So they have some offensive line issues to work out. I think that Jaden Daniels kid is he's a transfer from Arizona State. I think he's got some talent that they can use. He can throw the ball pretty well. He can move with it. He can run pretty well. So I think they've got it's a nice start for them. But they have, what takes longer with these schools, especially when somebody takes over with recruiting, is getting better up front. You can get skill position people. It's getting the offensive and defensive lines and getting that all figured out. So I think LSU is going to get better as the season goes along. I think it's Florida State is so much better than they were a couple years ago. So that's really impressive.
Well, take me through the timeline here because I'm trying to remember this. Jimbo Fisher leaves for Texas A&M. They hired another coach, and then he was there for like a year or two. Yeah, I think so. And then they hired this guy.
And they hired Mike Norvell. Yeah, and this is his third season there. So
because that was kind of, it's one of those things where especially with like Florida and Florida State. If they're bad, you kind of go, what the hell's going on? Because Florida, there's so many good high school football players here. It's like, I'm not saying they should be trying to win the national championship every year, but if they're bad, like something's wrong with you. You're not doing a good enough job recruiting, like something's wrong because you should be able to, as a state-funded school, you should be able to. University of Miami, they're private, and obviously there's some head coaching things and whatever, but like state schools like that, you should be good. You should be getting a lot of good players every year. So yeah, something was up.
Yeah, and you could see, by the way, University of Florida has a new head coach too, and you can see Florida still has a pretty good amount of talent, even though they looked great last year. You can see they got players are not the issue, and so I feel like it sucks to lose your first game, but I feel like LSU showed themselves pretty well, and I think Florida State's got a nice thing going. But, yeah, crazy finish. Florida State fumbles the ball on the goal line. LSU has to go 98 yards in a minute and a half with no timeouts. They pull that off. They get the touchdown, and then the extra point gets blocked.
Well, let's just go through all the issues in that game. So LSU, they get I think they had one player who got injured early in the game, or maybe two. I can't remember. They had a couple injuries. They had the same guy fumbled 2 punts.
Right.
Okay. They had a targeting penalty, so a guy got kicked out of the game. Florida State then had a couple pass interference calls, I think, that helped LSU get down the field and score a touchdown. Florida State fumbles the ball at the goal line. LSU gets a field goal blocked.
Right.
Did they get the extra point blocked, or did they just
yes.
or did LSU just miss? Okay.
No, it was blocked.
So they blocked a field goal and they blocked an extra point. So yeah, that's it was a pretty crazy game.
Which, to me, it's understandable. In the first week of college football, the special teams are going to be bad because
and you don't get any preseason games like the NFL.
Well, and you only get so much practice time. There's not work. Special teams is not going to be worked on as much as the other things are. So It doesn't surprise me that this weekend we saw a mess of special teams. I mentioned East Carolina missing an extra point and a field goal. Those kind of things happen.